Welcome to NCSS Here for You. Since 1958, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to high-quality services which promote healthy living and emotional well-being to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. We take our role in the community seriously and strive to provide the highest quality services. According to Eric Erickson, a noted developmental psychologist, every person must pass through a series of 8 interrelated stages over the entire life cycle. NCSS provides a continuum of services to meet the needs of individuals who at any point seek assistance. NCSS's purpose is creating a stronger community, one person at a time. Now, let's get to today's show.
I'm Joe Halco, Director of Community Relations for Northwestern Counseling and Support Services, and welcome to another episode of NCSS Here for You. Each month on this program, we discuss a human services topic, and we do that with staff from one of our 3 service divisions. Our 3 service divisions are Behavioral Health Services, Children, Youth, and Family Services, and Developmental Services. And on occasion, we have guests from organizations that NCSS collaborates with throughout the year. This month's episode is titled the NCSS Parent-Child Center. The Parent-Child Center, one part of NCSS's Ted Mabel Family Center, consists of 4 core teams operating 20 primary prevention programs in Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Parent-Child Centers help families make sure that children get off to a healthy start. Services include almost anything that families need: early childhood services, home visits to families with young children, playgroups, parent education, parent support, and information and referral. To discuss the NCSS Parent-Child Center in greater detail, I'm pleased to introduce this month's guests, and they are Amy Johnson, Parent-Child Center Program Manager, and Margaret Maley, Early Childhood Resource Team Leader. I'd like to welcome both of you to the program.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks.
So let's begin with, what is a Parent-Child Center?
I think you did a really good job in your intro of talking a lot about the great things that Parent-Child Centers offer. I think just to add a bit more context and things that people might not know is that our Parent-Child Center is one of 15 across the state of Vermont. So they're community-based organizations that are embedded in the various regions of our state, and they're really providing that primary prevention, early identification, and early intervention services to children and families throughout the state. We're a little bit unique in Franklin and Grand Isle because our Parent-Child Center is embedded within a designated mental health agency, which is a pretty neat thing for us because we offer a whole host of primary prevention services, but there are so many other services that NCSS offers that families access when they might come in the door through the Parent-Child Center, but might need something else in behavioral health or DS, or even in the children's division. And so one of the things that I often hear when I tell somebody that I'm working at a Parent-Child Center is, oh, you work at a child care center. And I think that's one of the most common misconceptions. A lot of the Parent-Child Centers throughout the state do have child care centers embedded within them, and we actually don't. While early childhood supports and services is one of our core functions, we do that in a little bit different way by supporting the registered home providers and child care centers in the region, whether it's through our food program, us going in and providing early childhood mental health consultation, or creating a child care action team to increase child care capacity and retain child care staff in our region. We don't have a child care center, but we do those supports in just a different and unique way.
And I think that is an important distinction because I think, as you've said, many people, or many times people, get a misunderstanding of what this means. The other thing that you mentioned that I think is really important, and it helps with seamless services to those that live in the two-county area, is the fact that by having it embedded into a designated mental health agency, there's that ability to have so many of the other services that might be required seamlessly given, as opposed to having to refer someone to other entities within the community to get certain services
Right,
provided.
it's that warm handoff. It really is that broad spectrum of the social determinants of health. We really do that really well within the Parent-Child Center, but also across the entire agency. And so it is really that that seamless delivery of services that is really helpful for families. It can be kind of hard when you're in one place and you're really valuing those services, and then to move to something completely different to access other services. We know that it has to happen, and in our region we partner really well with different organizations and entities, but it is really nice to have a broad range of services housed within one entity.
And I think our staff are really connected. I was thinking about, what are the misconceptions about a parent-child center? And I think one of them is that, where are they in the community? What are they doing specifically? And they're everywhere. I think we're in homes where we could be at court. We could be working with a family who has adolescents. We could also be working with a family who has a child experiencing a developmental delay. So I think that not only are we not a child care center, but we are in the community and working with different partners and families every day. So I think that's maybe one of the biggest misconceptions out there, is that we're maybe housed in an office or doing specific work that's not community-based, but it's often working with partners and communities.
Right. I think the home visiting piece is really a cornerstone to the Parent-Child Center. I'd say a majority of our staff, if not nearly 100%, are doing home visits. We're really meeting families where they're at, especially in a region that's so rural, that has transportation as a major barrier. We're going out and we're meeting families where they're at. We're there. If they can't come to services, we're coming to them. And so Margaret's really right. If you take a snapshot of a day and you look at a map of our entire region, we have people everywhere. They're covering the whole spectrum. And I'm glad that you mentioned the adolescence piece, because I think when people hear Parent-Child Center, they often think those are like the really young kids. And that's true. We have a lot of supports for young children, or even mothers who are pregnant and haven't even had their babies yet. But we also do work with populations up to 24 years old through our Reach Out program. We have adolescent services. We're helping adolescents with job skills, finding temporary housing, help with substance abuse support. So it's really that broad range of age from prenatal up to 24, and the caregivers as well.
I think another important note about everything that both of you are talking about is it isn't as if this is new.
Right.
All of these prevention and wellness programs that you've been providing for many, many years in the community.
Right, yeah. The Parent-Child Center, when I think about, we've been around for a long time. 30 years ago, the Parent-Child Center brought the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework here to Vermont as an evidence-informed framework that really does build on a family's strengths and builds those protective factors. So as the protective factors are built, that risk of abuse and neglect and all those ACEs, that tough stuff, the toxic stress really does go down. So we've really been doing that work for a really long time in this community and throughout the entire state of Vermont.
And speaking of that, earlier, Amy, you had talked about some of the differences in our particular Parent-Child Center versus those throughout the state. But let's talk about what makes all of the Parent-Child Centers throughout the state similar. What are the things that are similarities that you all do?
Well, that's a great question. So we've mentioned them kind of briefly here and there already, but every Parent-Child Center throughout the state has 8 core services. So home visiting, we already talked about that. That's one of the big ones. We serve thousands and thousands of families throughout the state, in our region and throughout the state through our home visiting program. We also have information and referral. I think this is huge. Our staff and the staff across the state know so well the resources the resources across the state that families can access. Somebody might go into a home because they need developmental education for a baby who was born with a medical or developmental barrier, but in talking to the family, they might need housing support or transportation support, and these home visitors really do know the wide range of services that are offered in the community and throughout the state. So that information and referral piece is huge. We have parenting education classes that we offer in various locations across the region, and parent support groups, caregiver support groups. If somebody's experiencing some kind of challenge, maybe it's a grandparent who now is parenting their grandchildren, so they're a kin caregiver, we've got a group for that. And so those support groups are really key. We have play group, that's really huge. We have a play group on site at NCSS, and we also have play groups throughout the region that are facilitated by our strong liaison network. We also have our early childhood services, so we support all the early childhood and education providers throughout the region, and we also provide concrete supports to families. So someone might say, you know, I need help with my electricity, it got shut off, and you know, we can help support families around that. And I think a big piece is that we're also doing a lot of community development. We are partnering with so many different organizations throughout our region and throughout the state, and I think that's something that we do really well, and something that I really love about our parent-child centers. We're really trying to do that collective impact work where we're like, how can we help with funding for this? How can we all join together on a similar vision or agenda around a way to support families in our region? So we're really doing that partnership and collaboration really well, and also looking at the early childhood system and how can we best meet the needs of children and families throughout our region and the state. And so that we're, as parent-child centers, we're all providing those 8 core services, which is a lot.
It is,
in targeted programming and also universal programming for everyone.
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, besides the 8 core services that all parent-child centers provide, let's go back again a little bit to some of the things that make us unique locally here, so that the viewer again can get a little sense of some of the things we do that the others don't.
Yeah, I think that a lot of what we do is continuum of care based. So we're talking about prenatal up to the age of 24, and those are part of the 8 core components of what we do. But we actually do a lot beyond that, and what Amy's talking about is kind of this universal access for families, is that you don't have to be a client, you don't have to be enrolled in services. You can access parent-child center education, support, programming, community activities, no matter who you are in this community. And so I think that's really important to just highlight that we do so much beyond home visiting and those programs that we talked about. And so one of the examples of that is as Amy mentioned, our liaison network. So we have volunteers within their communities that they live, say somebody lives in Montgomery, they're out there running a play group, they're accessing parent-child center funds to say, what does my community need right now? And what do if they want a yoga class, we talk to them and say, how can we make that work? So it's really unique in that we can be creative in what we think that each individual, even some very rural communities need, and address that when the time comes.
I think that we're unique in our region because of that designated agency piece that really connects us to so many more services in our region. But I think just in general, parent-child centers are unique because of their ability to serve everyone. And I think it's also their ability to be so creative and flexible in how they provide their range of services. And sometimes with various grants or whatever somebody might be funded through, it kind of boxes them into what they can do. And a lot of our grants and contracts really open us up to be really creative. And I think that parent-child centers as a whole really have their ear to the ground on what's going on in their particular region, knowing what that region specifically needs, that we know that the landscape is continuing to change, and we're really trying to stay ahead of that and really know and provide what families need during that time.
I think that's part of the early identification piece, is that saying early on in a community, when you have young children or even up to the age of 24, what does each community need? And I think that's what's unique about what a parent-child center can offer, and just thinking ahead, getting ahead of the curve, starting early. What does this one family need at this time? Not 10 years down the road seeing, kind of how their life has progressed. It's let's get in there early and provide those social supports and social connections to make sure that we're mitigating the risks of ACEs.
And therein lies really how the Parent-Child Center plays a primary prevention role in addressing the social determinants of health because of everything that you're saying.
Right.
And trying to address things early on as opposed to waiting until events occur and then you're doing treatments on the back end.
Right.
So could you share some of the creative and unique approaches that we're using in programming in our area?
Yeah, there's so many things. I think, right now, I think one of the big things that we have kind of coming down the pike, we have a Welcome Baby program where we have bags that have resources and some goods for families, and that the idea is that in the hospital, every family kind of gets this bag and it has these goodies that can help to connect them to services and resources. And for a while, we've been talking in different groups and meetings and different entities talking about what more can we be doing. This is this big pivotal moment in a family's life when a child is is born and coming home, and we know that the instances of perinatal mood and anxiety disorders are much higher than are actually reported. What if instead of giving a bag, at the hospital, we visited every family universally? We went into the home a couple weeks after the baby is born, when we start to see perinatal anxiety and mood disorders really peak or come to be. And we're there to ask the questions as trained professionals, to provide folks with that level of support, to tell them what the resources are, connect them into a support group if they're open to that, connect them. We're hoping to connect with postpartum doula networks so that if somebody says, I just want somebody to hold my baby so I can take a nap, we can provide that level of support. And then if they say, well, we really needed a one-on-one kind of perinatal mental health clinician to talk to, we have that at the Parent-Child Center on staff. And so it's looking at that kind of tiered system, a universal program that's tiered where there's something for everybody, but that everybody gets that visit. And we're really, again, that upstream work, like let's get ahead of the curve, let's get in when families really, really need us the most, and kind of help to mitigate some of those stressors that might lead families down kind of a different path. And that's just one but we have lots of examples where we're able to sit down and say, what's going on in our community, what's really going to help, how do we go further upstream in our primary prevention work, and then we just kind of throw out ideas and see what sticks and makes sense. And that's just such a fun part of working at a Parent-Child Center and NCSS in general.
And I think that's an important piece as well to say. I like how you said tiered, because I think a lot of our work is tiered. You don't necessarily, not every family needs immediate intensive support. Sometimes families just do need, I'm exhausted, I'm a new mom, I need somebody to hold my baby, help me wash the dishes, just have somebody to talk to. And we know that having those social connections are so important in families' lives, and especially when you have young children and life is really crazy. And so I think talking about, we can meet families where they're at any kind of point in their life, what they need, and to have people there who you can say, this is a trained person who can really help me with whatever I'm going through. I think that's what's great about parent-child centers.
That's terrific. Now, let's talk about Building Bright Futures and the Parent-Child Center collaboration over the years, and how that has led to the current hybrid position.
Great question. So Building Bright Futures has been around in the state and in our region for years and years and years, and there's been various iterations of Building Bright Futures, and I think kind of our regional coordinator and our council has kind of ebbed and flowed and changed as the different funding streams have changed. And so kind of in our current iteration of Building Bright Futures, it's funded by the Race to the Top grant, and we know that those funds are shifting. So when I was in the role as Building Bright Futures regional coordinator, something that I kept hearing was, funding is changing, but also what I was hearing in the region was, we really value this. We value the council. We value talking about the early childhood systems work. This is something that we don't want to go away. And so it was kind of coming up with a really creative and unique way to sustain the position in the region, because we knew it was of value to our region. Similar to the Franklin County Community Partnership, that was, I think, across the state, the whole state, but we've really retained that because that was something that we really valued as a region. And so it was, kind of approaching BBF and saying, hey, what do you think about this? Could we do some kind of collaboration with NCSS? And then bringing in NCSS, and NCSS saying, yeah, like, we're into this. This is great. And that's kind of how it came to be.
Yeah, so I currently hold that hybrid position, and which has been really nice to see, what is the community need and what is this other, backbone organization that I'm a part of, a backbone early childhood organization, and having a council here as early childhood stakeholders in the field who find that it's really important to have that here. So having a parent-child center and Building Bright Futures working together in collaboration to talk about how can we strengthen the system of care. And the nice thing about Building Bright Futures is when I have connections with, there's coordinators in every part of the state, and so I can talk to them and say, what's working really well in your region in early childhood within the system, or maybe what are the gaps and how can we address that as a community here, as a system, and I can be that voice, and maybe like what's not going so well or what do we need to work on, and to kind of have that loop between organizations has been really, really helpful and really great for our region.
Now, let's talk about, and I know we have to a degree here, but maybe a little more, about the Parent-Child Center's role in addressing adverse childhood experiences, which we also know as ACEs, right, and how that works.
I think that one of the things that we've mentioned quite a few times in this small chunk of time is that the Parent-Child Center does primary prevention really well, and that we are doing that upstream work. And I think that's really huge when we're talking about ACEs and mitigating the risk of ACEs. We're also we use the Strengthening Families Protective Factors framework, and the whole idea behind that framework really is to mitigate those risk factors, to build in the protective factors in families so that family and child wellness goes up and the risk of abuse and neglect and ACEs goes down. And so we're doing that every day. That's our primary focus. When we look at the Center for Disease Control's recommendations on how to mitigate ACEs, it really is those 8 core functions of a parent-child center. They're just exactly in line, which is just kind of wild when I looked at that and somebody showed me the infographic and said, here's the 8 core services that the parent-child center offers, and here's what the CDC recommends to mitigate ACEs. It's those same 8 things, and we know that, and we're doing that really well. That we are really doing that early identification, early intervention work, and that upstream work that's really preventing the ACEs.
And I think when we look at the social determinants of health, I mean, that is wellness across a continuum. So we're not just, I think we mentioned this before, but we're not just talking about, what is going on with the child. We're child and family centered, but what we're also talking about housing, we're talking about economic stability, we're talking about food security and insecurity. We're addressing all of the social determinants of health that we know need to be addressed and addressed early in order to kind of mitigate those risks and bring rates of abuse down and family wellness up. So I think it's really important to remember the broad range of what we're addressing within a family structure.
Right, and really tying people into to the health sector as well. If somebody, we go into a home and they say, I don't have a primary care physician, I don't have I'm not linked in, that we know that piece is just as important, that we're the physical health, the mental health, the wellness, the job, the food, all those pieces, it's all connected, and we're helping to serve families holistically around all of those pieces. And that's really creating that really great wellness for a family, that's helping them to thrive and move forward in a really positive way.
I'm going to turn the tables a little bit on everything that we've been talking about. And if there was no parent-child center, what would our community look like?
Oh, wow. We serve, as I said before, we serve thousands of families through targeted supports and also universal supports. I feel that if there was no parent-child center in the region or in the state, it would be very strongly felt by community members, by community partners, families, young children, adolescents, that there would be a major gap when we talk about prevention services in our region and in our state. We're doing that primary prevention work. We're doing it well, and it's really needed. And I think that if we weren't around, that you would really, really feel that strongly.
And I think you would maybe not see it today because we're out in the community, and each day to day, we're behind the scenes. You can't tell exactly what we're doing. I think when you would see it is 10 years from now. I think that would be the real impact. And so a lot of what we're doing is kind of tracking and collecting data on why is this work important, so we can show that helping now saves later. And so I think that would be really the biggest eye-opener for people years down the road.
It's that return on investment, and I think that sometimes when we kind of go further down the road in our work, whether it's tertiary prevention or it's the treatment focus, that you might see something really fast, but that prevention, that primary prevention work has that huge return on investment. It really is turning the curve on population health indicators. And so, as Margaret said, you might not see it immediately, but
Yes.
down the road you will definitely feel it, and feel it very strongly.
And I think that's the thing about when you talk about prevention, is that it's not just a today, it's something that over the years you begin to see what the difference is. So it's very important. So I know it might seem hard to believe, but our time is up.
Wow.
There's so much more that I wanted to get to, but certainly you've given a real good overview of what the Parent-Child Center does for our local community. So I do want to thank my guests, Amy Johnson and Margaret Maley, for sharing their insights on the value that the programming offered through the NCSS Parent-Child Center has on primary care prevention and addressing the social determinants of health. Now, before we go, it's time again for the NCSS Factoid of the Month. NCSS Adolescent Services provides an adolescent system of care that blends mental health and substance abuse services, offering seamless integrated treatment to the communities that we serve. Individual and group support is offered in a variety of treatment modules and settings. Among the services offered are adolescent drug and alcohol treatment services and juvenile drug court case management and treatment. In addition, we provide an array of independent living services to assist youth in successful transition to adulthood. NCSS is here for you with services to assist in an adolescent's time of need. NCSS, you may not know us until you need us. I also want to thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us again this month. You can learn more about the NCSS Parent-Child Center and all of our programs and services by going to ncssinc.org. I'm Joe Halko, and I'll be back next month with another episode of NCSS Here for You.
This has been another episode of NCSS Here for You. We hope that you found today's discussion informative and educational. Since 1958, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to high-quality services which promote healthy living and emotional well-being to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. Thanks once again for tuning in this month. NCSS's purpose remains creating a stronger community, one person at a time.